Hello and good evening, everybody. And tonight, as you can see, I am not going to be doing album rants, but instead, I am going to be continuing my top 50 musical artists final countdown, where basically I kind of talk about who my top 50 musical artists are of all time. And I started this a couple months ago. I think it was around December or so. And I posted spots 50 to 41 along with some runner-ups. So if you missed that episode, it might be a good idea to watch that one before watching this one so that you can kind of get caught up on where we stand and everything. But anyways, I would like to remind everyone that once again, this is purely subjective. This is purely my subjective opinion and who I would rather listen to as opposed to other artists. Now, I fully concede that there may be some artists that I rank higher than other artists that may actually be better. Again, it all comes down to my personal preference. If you would like to post your own rankings, I highly encourage that. I love the discussion. But again, we don't need personal attacks. We do not need profanity. We just need to kind of have fun here, chill out, and sort of talk about who our favorite musical artists are. But anyways, before I get started, I would like to recap very quickly and just kind of remind you of where we left off. So I started with 50th place, and I need to zoom in here a bit. And 50th place was Sabotage. 49th was Angel Witch. 48th, Bon Jovi. 47th, Foreigner. 46th, Triumph. 45th, Lucifer's Friend. 44, Manowar. 43, Raven. 42, Poison. And then 41 was The Who. So without further ado, I would like to go ahead and start with spot number 40. This is my 40th ranked musical artist of all time. And some people definitely probably have some hate for this act. And I can kind of see why. Because this is the solo career from someone who was a replacement singer in one of the greatest bands of all time. And these two lead singers have their own strengths and weaknesses. They all have their fans, they all have their haters. But I would like to remind you, or just sort of iterate real quickly, I am only judging this musician based off his solo career, not what he's done with any other artist. And well, that is going to be the Red Rocker himself, Sammy Hagar. Yes, and before he joined Van Halen, he had a very impressive solo career, in my opinion, and I really loved his early stuff. Yes, in the 80s, he really started drifting towards pop rock, and I'm not going to endorse that because, it wasn't really quite my style of music. But at the same time, he has put out some great stuff. And if you do not like Sammy Hagar's music, totally understandable. But at least as far as I'm concerned, he is a way better singer than David Lee Roth. Now, this right here is a greatest hits that kind of covers his 80s work, kind of his more pop rock stuff. And I'm not going to say it's great, but there is some good stuff on here. Now, I'll Fall in Love Again is kind of a sappy love song about, moving on from a relationship that obviously didn't work out. And I just gotta say, it may be a pop rock song. I think it is very catchy. I think it is such a good song, and it's just one of those songs that really puts me in a good mood, okay? It's all about moving forward, moving on with your life, and I just really love it. I've loved it ever since I was a teenager. Yeah, again, the sound probably could have been a little bit better, but great songwriting and some very strong vocals from Sammy. There's only one way to rock. That, of course, is his signature song, the song Heavy Metal. Now, what you may or may not know, Heavy Metal has two versions. We have the version that was on the Heavy Metal soundtrack, and that is the version you should be listening to because it is, well, the heavier version. This version that's on this greatest hits is the version that came from the Standing Hampton album, and, well, it's a little bit, as you probably guessed, it's a little bit more pop rock. I'm not too big of a fan of Eagles Fly, but Baby's on Fire I like. Two Sides of Love I surprisingly do like. Yeah, it's a poppy love ballad, but at the same time, very catchy, very well written. Then, of course, we have his big magnum opus, I Can't Drive 55. Yes, we have all heard it. We've all jammed to it while cruising along on the highway while listening to the radio. It's a classic, and there is no denying that, okay? And I did see Sammy in concert last summer, and he did play it, and it's a very silly song, but, you know, I just had to jam to it, and it was really awesome. And I Don't Need Love is another really strong number. But really, if you have listened to that era of his solo career that I just discussed and you didn't like it, I totally get that. But the thing is this, do not write off Sammy unless you've listened to his really early stuff. Like the stuff he put out right when he got out of Montrose. I'm talking these first 3 albums and actually a few after that, okay? We have 9 on a 10 scale. We have the self-titled album. We have Musical Chairs, which may actually be my favorite Sammy Hagar album. I mean, you know, Turn Up the Music is great. I'm Gonna Be Alright is a very underrated song. I really love that one, okay? I do like Reckless, okay? It kind of sounds like Highway Star in a little bit, okay? Crack in the World. That is a really kind of bluesy, slow, kind of sleazy number at the end. And I may be the only one who thinks this, but there is a segment within that song that sounds a lot like Sheep by Pink Floyd. I don't know if anyone else thinks that, but I am going to die on that hill. The self-titled album is great as well. Red, Catch the Wind, okay? Rock and Roll Weekend, okay? The Pits. Little Star Eclipse, great. And of course, the debut album, I mean, Keep on Rockin' is good. I love Urban Gorilla. Flamingos Fly is kind of like calypso music, I guess. May not be his best, but I do like Silver Lights, All American. And of course, Rock and Roll Romeo and Young Girl Blues, a very bluesy number. It's actually a cover, but it's great. So yeah, Sammy Hagar's solo career. Highly recommended. Again, if you've heard his 80s stuff and you hate it, give his 70s stuff a chance. So that is going to bring me up to 39th place. And this is also going to be the solo career from someone who originated from another musical act. And it is going to be the Motor City Madman himself, coming straight out of the Amboy Dukes, and of course, that is the one and only Ted Nugent. Now, again, I know that Ted Nugent has been controversial to a few people. If he said something that you don't agree with, please keep your opinion to yourself, because I am discussing his music, not his personal life, so now we got that out of the way. But yes, he is very well known for songs like Cat Scratch Fever and Stranglehold, which come on the radio non-stop. And I'm telling you, there was a point where I had to kind of take a break from both of them because I was just hearing them on the radio too much. But of course, I stopped listening to the radio, and everything kind of worked out in the end, okay? But yeah, Just What the Doctor Ordered is great. I love Free For All. Same thing with Dog Eat Dog. And we have a cover of Baby Please Don't Go. It's a great cover. And then, yes, Wang Dang Sweet Poontang. Yes, we did just say that. Other highlights from his solo career. We, of course, have the debut album, okay? I'm sure most of you have heard of this, and a lot of the songs on here were on that greatest hits I just showed you. Of course, Stranglehold, but there's also other stuff like Stormtroopin'. Stormtroopin' is great. So is Hey Baby and Snakeskin Cowboys. Where have you been all my life? You Make Me Feel Right at Home. I talked about this on Album Rant one time. It's a very jazzy song, and it's very different from all the other stuff in his discography. And his drummer, Cliff Davies, actually does sing it after a lot of speculation. It's been confirmed. It's a very interesting approach, but I like it. And it closes really well with Queen of the Forest and this live album. Double Live Gonzo. You have got to pick this up. It is an absolute beast. One of the greatest live albums ever. Okay? As you can see right here, it features a lot of stuff from that debut album, but it's also got a few songs from Cat Scratch Fever. It's also got some unreleased songs that never really got a studio recording, and it's really great to hear it because you would not be able to hear it anywhere else. And yeah, we got a couple Amboy Dukes covers on here, which I could have done without, but still, very solid live album, very, very highly recommended. Ted Nugent. So with 38th place, I am now going to go to what I call the Big Five of arena rock. I have already talked about Boston. They were a runner-up. I have already talked about Foreigner. They placed 47th. So 38th place is going to be another one of those Big Five artists. And it is going to be the guys from San Francisco, Journey. And they went through a ton of different eras, and they were most successful when they recruited lead vocalist Steve Perry. And the classic lineup, of course, is Steve Perry on lead vocals, Neil Sean on lead guitar, Ross Valory, I don't know how you say it, whatever. The bass guitarist. We had Steve Smith on the drums and Jonathan Cain on the keyboards. Now, their 70s stuff I really, really enjoyed. We had songs like Wheel in the Sky and Any Way You Want It and Lights and A Lovin' Touchin' Squeezin', great blues number, okay? What else did we have? We also had Just the Same Way. We had Line of Fire. We had Where Were You? Some of their all-time greatest stuff. Now, in the 80s, they kind of went in kind of a bad direction. Now, don't get me wrong, Escape was a very good album. Of course, we had their big hit, Don't Stop Believin', Hold On to That Feeling, yeah, okay, there we go. But Stone in Love was great. The title track, Escape, is one of my all-time favorite Journey songs, okay? But there was also Who's Crying Now, Open Arms. While it is a piano ballad, it's a very catchy piano ballad, so I'm going to give it a pass. And but then on the Frontiers album, we really started diving into synth pop. Still a few hits here and there, a few songs I did like, such as Chain Reaction and Edge of the Blade and Rubicon. Can't go wrong with Separate Ways, Worlds Apart. But of course, we had songs like Send Her My Love and what else? After the Fall. I wasn't a big fan of that one either. And then we got Raised on Radio, which was one big pile of crap. But what I think everyone needs to check out at some point in their life, Journey before Steve Perry. You need to listen to these three albums. The self-titled album, Look Into the Future, and Next. It is a very different kind of Journey. They were very much a jam band back then. They had a ton of instrumentals. Some of it kind of bordered on fusion rock, I guess, but man, there is some pretty heavy stuff on here. And these three albums are very overlooked. Barely anyone ever remembers them, and it's a real shame because there is some really great stuff on here, even though they didn't really hit it big on these three albums. Greg Rowley primarily was the lead vocalist, and he kind of stepped out of the way when Steve Perry came in. He still did sing occasionally, but he wasn't the primary vocalist. And Neil Sean actually sang a few times as well, but yeah, I definitely think there is some stuff on here that is definitely worth a listen. Primarily, probably my favorite song out of this era is off of Look Into the Future. It's I'm Gonna Leave You. What a heavy, thunderous, fast album closer. I really think it's a definite song that does not get enough love. So yeah, that is 38th place, and that is Journey. Okay, 37th place. I may get some flack for ranking these guys this low. I realize they are very influential. I realize that they have been very important for this genre of music. I understand that they are legends. Again, my personal opinion. And actually, I've been ripping on the radio quite a lot because it ruined a lot of music that I really used to love. But I do have to give it credit for this and probably only this. It did really introduce me to this artist, and I really started to realize I've been writing them off for the longest time. I thought they were just, another band just like the Beatles that wasn't quite heavy enough for me, but I realized I was wrong because in the late 60s and early 70s, they really started adopting a sound that I really enjoyed. And yes, here we go, the Rolling Stones. And I'm going to show you the Hot Rock's Greatest Hits album. But really, guys, there is a lot that they've done that is not on here that is definitely a must listen. Now, I just finished saying that I was really afraid that these guys would be, another version of the Beatles, and well, their early stuff does kind of teeter on that. So their really early stuff, the first couple of tracks on here, not quite my cup of tea. I realize it's the cup of tea for a lot of people, but not quite me. But can't go wrong with I Can't Get No Satisfaction. I do like Get Off of My Cloud. I know it's kind of a song that falls through the cracks. I really kind of like that one. 19th Nervous Breakdown. Even though it never ended up on an actual album, it was just a single, great rocker. And we also have Let's Spend the Night Together. It's decent. I do like Paint It Black, but really, the second disc right here is where it really takes off. Jumpin' Jack Flash, probably my favorite Rolling Stones song. Yes, if it's overplayed, fine, I'll give you that, okay? Street Fighting Man is great. Love Sympathy for the Devil. Gimme Shelter, heard a few too many times. But Midnight Rambler, oh my God, I love that one. This right here is a live version. It's also off the Let It Bleed album. Definitely to hear it. Of course, you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. We've all heard it a cajillion times. It's a very overplayed song, but I am not just going to sit here and say it's bad. It's incredibly catchy, and I do really like it. Brown Sugar is also great, but this only goes up to the Sticky Fingers album, okay? All their stuff throughout the 70s is mostly pretty solid, like Exile on Main Street, what else? Goathead Soup, It's Only Rock and Roll, and Some Girls as well. All great albums that you should definitely hear. So yeah, 37th place, Rolling Stones. Okay, 36th place. This is really an artist that is defined by one album. He's released two albums, or two solo albums. And the second one left a lot to be desired, but that first one I have reviewed on Album Rant before, and it's really the album that is the reason why this artist is on here. This, of course, is former Kiss lead guitarist, and that, of course, is the Vinnie Vincent Invasion. Now, like I said, this album right here has been reviewed before on Album Rant, and it's absolutely electric, okay? I mean, we got Boys Are Gonna Rock, Shoot You Full of Love, as on the nose as that is, that's a great song. No Substitute is the obligatory power ballad for the album, but it's a great ballad. We have Animal, great guitar solo at the end, it's just killer. We have Twisted, 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 another very fast rocker, very aggressive. Now, the second side, the second half, may not quite be as good as the first, but you can't go wrong with Do You Want to Make Love, or Back on the Streets, or I Want to Be Your Victim. Baby O is probably the weakest one on here, but the title track, Invasion, is a great way to close the album. So yeah, not a lot of people have really heard of this guy, and if you're a big fan of the late 80s glam scene, you probably are going to like this album, and this is a lot heavier than artists such as Warrant, or Winger, or some other ones. Who else? Maybe Cinderella to an extent, but yeah, Vinnie Vincent Invasion. This album itself is a must-listen. All Systems Go, I am not a huge fan of. I would probably skip that one. That's the one with Mark Slaughter. But this right here, the self-titled album, it's a must-listen. Okay, we are now at 35th place. And this is going to be a rock and roll band. It is a band that has been, whose lead vocalist, the front man, I hate that term, has been very passionate about the fact that this is not a heavy metal band. It's just a rock and roll band. And someone even said they have more in common with Chuck Berry than they do Black Sabbath. I don't really agree with that, but I'm not really going to tell the band that they're wrong or anything, but that is British hard rock artist Motorhead. And they originated out of the remnants of a band called Hawkwind. The lead vocalist, the guy you see right there on the Greatest Hits cover, that is Lemmy. And he was on a couple albums with Hawkwind, and he was kicked out for drug usage. And so while he was with Hawkwind, he wrote a song called Motorhead. And he took that song and formed a new musical act and called the new musical act Motorhead. And they recorded their own version of Motorhead, which ended up on the album Motorhead. Confused yet? I totally get it. But anyways, that very first album, I wasn't too big of a fan of. It seemed to be more of a punk rock album, which may not quite be my style. But it all changed in 1979 when we got the Overkill album, which had a very thundering, aggressive, heavy title track, Overkill. What else was on there? We also had No Class, Damage Case, Stay Clean. All great songs. Then, of course, we have the Bomber album, Dead Men Tell No Tales, Stone Dead Forever, the title track. But really, guys, probably my favorite Motorhead album is, of course, Ace of Spades. I have reviewed Ace of Spades before on Album Rant. Title track is great. Love Me Like a Reptile is great. Bite the Bullet. The Chase is Better Than the Catch. We Are the Road Crew. Fire, Fire. What else do we have? Shoot You in the Back. And of course, The Hammer. I really think those three albums, Overkill, Bomber, and Ace of Spades, I really think those are their best work. But of course, we also have Iron Fist. Orgasmatron. I love Orgasmatron, especially the title track. Very dark, very aggressive, but also sleazy. I think I skipped one in there. Yes, Another Perfect Day. We also had Rock and Roll. And then, starting in the 90s, all to the end of their career, and they put out like 22 albums. It was ridiculous. They had an album out like every year or two or so. They were really just cranking it out. And just like AC/DC, they found a style and they just stuck with it. But they had a drummer by the name of Mickey D, who was fresh off the heels of King Diamond. And he is one of the very few drummers that I can tell that it's him. He has his own distinct style, and I think he's a phenomenal drummer. Right now he's with the Scorpions, but he stayed with Motorhead all to the very end until Lemmy's very untimely death. But may he rest in peace, by the way. But that is my 35th pick, Motorhead. All right, we are now on 34th place. And this is an artist that I have been into for a very long time, ever since college. But I was always kind of a casual fan. I made it up to maybe their late 70s, early 80s work, and then I kind of tuned out for a little bit. But I was revisiting their Greatest Hits album, and I decided to complete my collection of this artist's discography. And really, there was a lot of stuff I was missing out on, so, you know, some of these artists, you really have to hear all their stuff because they really did put out some great stuff past their, what is considered to be their classic era. And this is going to be a prog-rock artist, British prog-rock artist that originated in the late 60s. That is going to be Yes. And I reviewed a couple of their albums before on an Album Rant. I have reviewed a Greatest Hits album, I know that, not this one. But Their first two albums were called Yes, self-titled, and Time and a Word. And I think they really do fall through the cracks a lot. They definitely sounded a lot more like Deep Purple at the time, which I am totally fine with. But I mean, yeah, they're pretty heavy. They're pretty raw as well. And if you've not heard them or you've just not gotten around to it, their first two albums are really, really solid. But of course, the early 70s is where they had most of their success. They put out the Yes album in 1971. It was the very first album with lead guitarist Steve Howe, and we had songs like Starship Trooper, multi-part 9-minute prog number. It was great. Yours Is No Disgrace, another great extended prog number. But of course, we have the very folksy, very successful lead single, I've Seen All Good People. We've all heard it before. It is a classic. And even though it's overplayed, I don't care. It is a great song. I love it. But really, guys, they're probably the most well-known for Roundabout, which is another 8-minute prog number. And man, that bass by Chris Squire is just dominating the entire song. It's amazing. John Anderson, their lead vocalist, is a really great lead vocalist, okay? I sometimes kind of compare these guys with Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and as far as the folk rock influences, they definitely sound kind of similar, but really, guys, I would say these guys are a lot closer to Rush than they are Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. But yeah, Roundabout is another song that I love, and I don't care one bit that the radio plays it over and over and over again. We also have Long Distance, Run Around, Heart of the Sunrise, and South Side of the Sky. But after that, after the Fragile album, they had Close to the Edge, which again kind of combined folk music with prog rock, and it was a very great combination. And I think most people consider that to be their best album, or a lot of people do. Maybe not everyone, but many do, at least from what I've read. Now, unfortunately, after Close to the Edge, they tried to take the whole prog rock thing to the extreme, and they released something called Tales from Topographic Oceans, which was a total of 80 minutes, 2 records, and 4 songs. Every song, well, actually Sweet, as I should say, was pushing 20 minutes at least. And, well, it was a little too much in my opinion. And the mid to late 70s were not quite as good as the early 70s. Don't get me wrong, I do like Relayer. I do like Going for the One, but Tormato I have never liked. Then we had Drama, which was a little bit better than Tormato in my opinion. They were joined by a couple of guys from the Buggles, and there was some good stuff on there, but some not so great stuff. Into the Lens I don't really like that much. But then they kind of joined the whole new wave thing throughout the 80s. Trevor Rabin joined the band, and we had 90125, which I thought I would hate. I really did. But when I listened to it, I realized aside from Owner of a Lonely Heart, there was some good stuff on there. Big Generator was all right, and then we had Union, which should have been the greatest thing ever, but it kind of fell flat. But really, guys, in the 90s, they released 2 live albums. Well, actually, they were live and studio albums. They had live tracks and they had studio tracks. It was called Keys to Ascension. Listen to it. It's great. The live stuff is great. The studio tracks are great. And I think it's often overlooked. But yeah, 34th place. Yes, I do enjoy them, okay? They have a very rich discography. I finally heard the entire thing just recently, and I really realized there was a lot of stuff that I just hadn't really picked up for the longest time, and I wish I had. So, we are now at 33rd place. I am going to return to the new wave of British heavy metal, and this is considered to be the artist that really inspired Metallica. This is considered to be their biggest influence. Another artist that really hasn't really appealed that much to mainstream audiences, but again, you probably guessed what I'm talking about. That, of course, is Diamond Head. Yes, helmed by Brian Tatler and Sean Harris. And their bass player and their drummer kind of circulated throughout their career. But really, their greatest album is definitely, of course, their first one, and that was called Lightning to the Nations. And that included the title track, which was great, The Prince. It kind of starts out, and it kind of sounds like A Corpse Without Soul by Merciful Fate, or, well, A Corpse Without Soul by Merciful Fate sounds a lot like The Prince. But yeah, it's really got kind of a classic rock vibe to it, but it's definitely a heavy metal song through and through. Sucking My Love, a great song about a blowjob. Am I Evil, probably their most famous song ever. I definitely feel like it was at least inspired by Child in Time by Deep Purple. You know, it's got that dum dun 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 dun, and it just keeps building and building and building. This is another song that I think was very highly influenced by Stairway to Heaven in the sense that it starts out kind of slow and kind of brooding, and it just gradually picks up and builds up throughout the entirety, and it ends in some very thunderous guitar work and some very explosive guitar work. And to those who may not have ever heard this artist, you really need to hear it. Sweet and Innocent and It's Electric are pretty by the books. But the actual last song off the album is Helpless, which is about a 6-minute song or so, or 6 minutes and change, and it's very well written. I love it. The rest of this right here, we have bonus tracks, which are B-sides mostly, but Shoot Out the Lights is really great. Now, what did they do after Lightning to the Nations? Unfortunately, they never really quite reached the height of Lightning to the Nations, but they still did some pretty good work. Their next album was called Borrowed Time, and it is represented on this Greatest Hits album. We had In the Heat of the Night. We had a re-recording of Lightning to the Nations. We had Borrowed Time. But really, folks, the best song off Borrowed Time didn't make it onto this Greatest Hits album, To Heaven from Hell. That song is dark and brooding, but it's awesome. I don't know. A lot of people seem to think Borrowed Time was a pop rock album. I don't quite buy it. I don't think they quite cross over on Borrowed Time. But maybe on Canterbury, there's a argument to be made about that. Canterbury is represented by the last couple of tracks, Making Music, Out of Phase, Ishmael, and To the Devil His Due. Definitely some weaker stuff there. Didn't quite have the punch that some of the other stuff did, but still. Diamond Head, very underground, very out of the mainstream, but I think if you're a fan of Metallica, I think if you're a fan of new wave of British heavy metal, these guys are another must listen. So we are getting close to the end of the video, but for 32nd place, this is another artist that I picked up a Greatest Hits back when I was in college, actually, and I kind of threw it off to the side for a pretty long time, but as I was, trying to struggle with what CD to pick for the car, I always seem to go back to this one, even though I was never really a fanatic about these guys. But, a couple of years ago, I was like, you know what, I really need to start looking more into them. They've got some great stuff out there. It is another British hard rock metal band, and that is UFO, okay? And probably most well known because in the mid to late 70s, they had a guitarist by the name of Michael Schenker, who had a brief period of time. He was in the Scorpions, and his brother, Rudolf Schenker, has been their longtime guitarist. Well, he is most well known for his solo career and his work with UFO. Now, this Greatest Hits right here covers their, classic material. It covers their albums Phenomenon, Force It, No Heavy Pettin', Lights Out, and Obsession. Those are the albums that Michael Schenker was on, and they're the most popular albums. But yeah, Doctor, it's a song that Iron Maiden uses to open most of their concerts, and, well, it's a great way to open up their concert. And I will always associate that song with just anticipating Iron Maiden taking the stage, just coming out blasting. It'll always remind me of the beginning of an Iron Maiden concert. Rock Bottom is great. Out in the Street is originally from the Force It album. It may very well be my favorite UFO song. Mother Mary is decent. Natural Thing is very electric, very hard-hitting. Love Natural Thing. I'm a Loser is one of the more soft songs, but can't go wrong with Only You Can Rock Me. I love Born to Lose and Too Hot to Handle. Lights Out is a very fast, heavy, punching rocker, okay? But these last 3 tracks on here, they are actually live versions that come from the Strangers in the Night live album. And this is one of the greatest live albums ever, okay? You can see right here, yes, it includes most of the hits right here, most of the songs I just talked about, but the live versions are very ferocious and very heavy, and it's, like I said, a very solid live album and a great representation of this era. Now, unfortunately, in the 80s, Michael Schenker left the band, and they didn't quite reach the height of that era, but they did have an album called The Wild, The Willing, and The Innocent. I think I said that correctly. Yeah, I'll go with that. That was a really good, solid album, which you probably need to hear. But yes, their 80s stuff and beyond wasn't quite as good as their 70s stuff, but still, great artists, UFO. You probably already heard them, but if not, check them out. And then 31st place, which is going to be the last artist I talk about tonight. This is considered to be, these guys are considered to be one of the big 4 of thrash metal. Now, I've already talked about Anthrax. Anthrax was a runner-up. So this is the second time I've talked about one of the big 4 from thrash metal. And it is going to be Megadeth. Yes. Helmed by Dave Mustaine, a former lead guitarist from Metallica, who was removed for his substance abuse issues. And so he went and he formed his own band called Megadeth. Now, this right here is a greatest hits. And I gotta be honest, I'm not too big of a fan of this greatest hits. I mean, we do have 2 new tracks, Kill the King and Dread in the Fugitive Mind. I really like them, but it focuses quite a lot on their 90s stuff, actually, which wasn't quite it's not quite the style of music that I associate myself with, but these are their 3 biggest albums right here. We had Peace Sells, But Who's Buying? Love that title track. We have So Far, So Good, So What? And that is an album that I did review on Album Rant, and I will stand by my stance that it is a great Megadeth album. And then, of course, we have Rust in Peace, probably their most famous album. But yes, aside from the title track here, Wake Up Dead is great. So is The Conjuring. I saw these guys last September, I want to say. And yeah, it was last September. And they put on a great show. The set list wasn't quite my favorite, but they sounded so strong that I had a great time, okay? Black Friday is also good. So is Bad Omen. I've already kind of talked about So Far, So Good, So What? But I think I said that the second half is actually a lot better than the first half. Both halves are great, but 502, In My Darkest Hour, Liar, Hook and Mouth, all some of their best stuff. It's very thrashy, very heavy, and of course, very, very well written, okay? That's not to say the first half isn't good either. Into the Lungs of Hell and Set the World Afire are great Megadeth songs. But of course, Rust in Peace, their most famous one. Holy Wars, The Punishment Due, a great leadoff track. Hangar 18, Take No Prisoners, very, very aggressive, very, very hard-hitting, okay? We also have Tornado of Souls and the title track, Rust in Peace, Polaris. Great album, great thrash metal album, and I have been into them casually ever since high school, and in my latter years, I really have started to get into them a lot more, and so, yeah, Megadeth is going to be 31st place, and that is going to conclude my episode for tonight. So to recap one more time about what we talked about tonight, 50th place was Sabotage. 49th place was Angel Witch. 48th place was Bon Jovi. 47 was Foreigner. 46, Triumph. 45, Lucifer's Friend. 44, Manowar. 43, Raven. 42, Poison. 41, The Who. 40th place is the Sammy Hagar solo career. 39th, Ted Nugent. 38th, Journey. 37, The Rolling Stones. 36, The Vinnie Vincent Invasion. 35, Motorhead. 34, Yes. 33, Diamond Head. 32, UFO. And then 31, Megadeth. And that is going to be the conclusion of tonight's episode. My next episode I hope to put all my love into, but until then, have a very pleasant evening.